Hi, I'm Veronica, and this is Bags, Books, and Bow Wows. I like to talk about affordable, high-quality handbags, and I'm also trying to make mindful shopping a habit. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing. Today, I'd like to talk about how you can have that quiet luxury look on a contemporary budget. Before we get started, I'm going to say that this is not an endorsement of quiet luxury in any way. I think there are some ways in which it can be really problematic. The first way is that right now what we're seeing is a lot of influencers bashing other influencers, or women bashing other women, or gay men bashing other gay men, or any configuration of that, where we're saying, if you don't dress this way, you're not classy. Dress the way you like. We rise by lifting others. Robert Ingersoll said that. It's attributed to a lot of people. Don't know a lot about him. Also, in considering whether or not you want to emulate old money, just, it is rooted in like imperialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, ick. But I also happen to love British handbags. I think they're beautiful. So if it's your aesthetic, that's just what it is. I'm happy to blab on endlessly about that. Let me know in the description if you would like to hear more of my thoughts on that. I'm going to talk about the aesthetic and the bags. First of all, I would boil down the aesthetic to being kind of a version of minimalism. And actually, she was not trying to talk about that, but Louise Poston, I will link it in the description below. Louise Poston just did a video, which is really good, about wearing your clothing differently, was what it was. But it's really about how to put things together. And I really feel like a lot of the looks she ends up with, especially in this like tonal monochromatic look, really does sort of fit what we would be going for in this kind of aesthetic. And it's very toned down, very gravitating toward neutrals and natural fibers, and you want like very well tailored clothing, and you wear it. That's the thing with old money, and we'll get into that later with like the trash Birkin thing. I worked in the horse industry for a while, and people use their stuff. These, old money people do use their stuff. So you're not looking at, kind of the antithesis of using your stuff as like, plastic slipcovers on a sofa. Like, that's not the attitude at all. So you need to pick pieces that are built to wear in rather than wear out. So with leather, as we're transitioning to talking about handbags here, you really want to be looking at stuff that's not so coated, that will end up looking like it will take on a personality as you break it in, and it's not so much pieces that are going to look just beat after a little while. Something like a Kate Spade bag, like a lot of those are very plasticky, and once the plastic wears off, it might as well be vegan leather. There's leather underneath. It's not vegan, but that's the opposite of what you're going for. You really want something, and when I was looking around for something else, I happened to find an old Celine bag, which I will insert here, that just had that like really nice, like, this piece has been used. It's tan really takes that well, like an English tan kind of color, and a very, not what I think of when I think of Celine, but a very like minimally processed leather, where you really see, it's very similar to like saddles and bridles, where they get worn over time and they take on a personality. As far as vintage or pre-loved luxury bags, Caleb Snell did a really good video, which I'll link below. We're going to go even cheaper today, because that's me. So I'm going to talk about 3 contemporary brands. Although when I say contemporary, I hate using the word contemporary. That's what we mean when we're talking about like that price range. I will also almost always be talking about vintage of the same brand. And we're also going to be bookending it with 2 completely different approaches. The first one is that a lot of times, when I worked in the horse field, whatever, if somebody has something very unusual and interesting and people are asking about it, it's almost always something they picked up on vacation. So pieces from exotic locales is pretty cool. And then not everybody has it. An easy way to do that right now is Etsy. And the bag that I have is not quite right. Well, it kind of is for the trends. It's just a little too finished, although this bag, I've worn it and it's wearing really well. I would highly recommend this bag. Even more so, this bag is from Lucky Bags and Wallets, and Lucky Wallets and Bags. It's an Etsy shop, and I paid under $50 for it. It's just a little armpit bag, and I love wearing it. It's a great little bag, and it does come in other colors that are more neutral. She also has some that are more in that, I think it's called aniline leather, where it's not this kind of finish, a little more like vintage Coach-esque leathers. But just in general, she is from Ukraine. If you're shopping on Etsy for bags, I find there are beautiful bags from Ukraine, and not so much because when you're shopping on Etsy, you always have to be looking out for people who are selling basically fake bags, even if they're not labeled as a fake. But I have accidentally bought a scarf. Once I accidentally bought a scarf that I didn't realize was a copy of a Dior scarf. I don't need to buy a copy of a Dior scarf. And so I ended up throwing it out. I don't know every single bag that's out there. So I like buying from sellers that are typically making their own stuff and not just copying other people's designs. Since I'm a designer myself, other kind of designer, but I don't like to buy from people that are mostly copying. But I find if I search for, when you're on Etsy, if you use like shop location and choose Ukraine, when you're looking for bags, you find just really neat bags. And the bag that actually made me want to make this video, it was a gift. It is way more expensive than I would categorize as an affordable bag. It was over $600. But when I was in Santa Fe with my mom last weekend, she bought me this nice little bag, which I feel like has very much the aesthetic you would be going for with quiet luxury. The store we went into was called Tom Taylor, and the brand is Billy Sunday, although it doesn't seem like he sells anywhere like online besides through Tom Taylor. And just the store in general had just beautiful, beautiful leathers. Oh my gosh, the smell of this. It's just wonderful. It has this crazy clasp, although I would not believe it when I looked at it, but I flew home with this, and by the end of the trip, I was like able to undo and do this bag up. I'm trying to show you. Yep, I can still do that. That's my left hand. Not even, no trouble. It's crazy. But I thought that was a beautiful bag. It has that kind of equestrian aesthetic. I mean, when you're talking about old money, you're almost always going to be talking about a horse, a boat, golf, tennis. That's sort of, at least on the casual end, that's generally the look. And also, colonizing countries that don't need to be colonized. A bag you pick up on vacation or a bag from a small maker, those are very great options for how to get this look in a very unique way. And I don't think I said that earlier, but you're buying something, the idea behind quiet luxury and sort of old money, this aesthetic though, that I do like, is that you're buying something to use and keep. And so buy something you really like. You're not necessarily I actually love, like, when we go back to this little armpit bag, I personally, I think I learned to wear bags when these were fashionable. And to me, I know some people hate them. I feel very put together. I know where my stuff is. Nobody's going to steal it because it's right under my arm. I feel very confident and pulled together when I wear that kind of bag. And you want the bag that makes you feel confident and pulled together, not necessarily the bag that everyone else is wearing, which is also a great thing to go for in general anyway. The first contemporary brand I'm going to talk about is super obvious, I feel like. Not all of their bags would fall under the heading of quiet luxury because some have their name written all over them, but Coach still offers some quiet luxury type bags where it's really about beautiful leather. The current bag that I would really, is the Dakota bucket bag. I think it's around $4.95, I think is the price, which is high to me, but it's a beautiful leather. It's also, you can see it's that kind of leather. It's their glove tan leather. So 5 years from now, it's not going to look new, but it's going to look beautiful. It's definitely knows how to do what was in that Celine bag I showed you first. It's going to be beautiful. And it's just a very simple, graceful, I mean, there probably is a hang tag, which I don't wear the hang tags on any of my bags. It's just not my personal taste. And then, of course, there is vintage Coach. And the only vintage Coach, which she's a little too dressed up. She even has, my sister-in-law works at the Fendi boutique in Tokyo, and so she gave me this lovely scarf, which is too much for this bag, but I'm not going to take it off because it's a little bit of a job to put it on and take it back off. But this is a vintage Coach bag from the 90s, which I think is really a great era to look for. This is the Willis. I think it's the 9927, and it's lovely, but whatever is your favorite bag is the loveliest. The bags from the 90s are typically in good shape, and they were being really well made. This one was made in the US. The 90s is kind of when that stopped. And it is just that gloved hand leather where it's just one piece of leather. This is a very simply constructed bag. And there's no lining to like get gross or things to separate, like where it's like plastic coated and something's going to separate off of something. It's just meant to be used. And I don't use this bag enough. It's gorgeous and I don't use it enough. They are a little bit susceptible to getting scratched from just sort of regular use. And I find that leather CPR really helps with that. And I've actually recently been looking online for sort of Y2K era bags because that's kind of what's coming back in. I just was looking around. I'm not trying to buy bags, so why am I looking at bags? There's a line that I think was probably late 90s, early 2000s called the Hampton line. And there's one particular bag, which is like the hobo bag. It'll fill the brief as far as quiet luxury, not having a lot of branding and looking very elegant. It reminds me a lot of there's the Hermes trim bag and the Gucci Jackie 1961 bag, which was just getting advertised. That's probably what made me look for it. Seeing so many ads for them, and it is a beautiful bag. Not my budget range at all, but and it also makes me think of those older bags, and I'm like, you can get those older bags. So like this bag in good shape, I did pay under $100, but this condition, you might be looking at closer to $200 for that bag, and I'm like, you can get a lot of vintage Coach from the 90s in that $100 to $200 range in very good condition. A lot of the Hampton line, they're a little later. They're made in China. They're fabric lined. They're not quite as built for the ages, but they are sort of on trend if you're into that style. But it's more a matter of if you like that particular style. There's also one in particular, I don't know if I know the name of it. I don't know if anything was listed. It really looks to me, it feels very much like an Hermes Birkin, which the whole thing right now is having these Hermes Birkins that are really broken in. I don't like the word trashed. I think the concept of these are bags that we love and we use, and even if you buy them secondhand, like this is a bag that's had a life. I'm very good with that. I will be probably talking about that in another video soon. I'm very good with that. But you are walking around with a bag that has had a life before this moment, and you're carrying that around, and that's kind of neat. On Mercari and Poshmark, you will see them typically like maybe listed in the low hundreds. I bet the selling prices will end up being a little bit below 100. So Coach is really a good way to get, the look. Would it be me if we didn't talk about Dooney and Bourke? This bag, I'm actually trying to sell it. I love the look of it. I never carry it, but it really does have, when I look at the measurements and all the things, it closes very differently, but it also has that Birkin kind of feel. Now this is their Florentine leather, so you get very minimal branding. You have like something on the back that they always have, and then this, you can't even read it. You can read it better in person. You can also flip it around and there's a duck on the other side. Whatever floats your boat, but it's not terribly in your face, and the leather is just beautiful. Now I will say this is very susceptible to scratches, to the extent that just some of them that I've seen online, and I did buy this secondhand, and this was a bit scratched when I bought it, and I used leather CPR on it, and here she is. You can't really see most of the scratches on her. There was one like deep one on the bottom that is like structural now, but it's not bad. But you have to want things to not continue to look brand new if you're buying this kind of leather. There's lots of these on Poshmark of the Florentine. There's different designs. Go with the design that suits you, your personality. I have a bag here that's not, it's from a different line. It's from the Emerson line, which is a little bit weird. It's a waxier leather. I actually really love this bag, and I suppose that this particular bag really also fills our brief. But what I wanted to show you, because there are a lot of Florentine styles, this is the Shannon tote, which is also available in the Florentine leather on the Dooney site, and I'm sure you can get it secondhand. And this clasp is much better. When you're looking at these guys, you will see, especially if someone really had long fingernails, you'll see so many scratch marks because you have to like really use your finger to open that. And this is much smoother opening and closing. And it's a little stirrup. It's cute. It does say Dooney and Bourke on it, but I feel like you have to be pretty close to it to actually see that. There's a couple of other ones that have this clasp, and I feel like that would be, and they're, because some of the Florentines do have like a lot of tassels, which is not my personal thing. If it's your personal thing, if you're more boho, get a tassel, get a bag with tassel, you know. It's not my thing. This spot of vintage Dooney and Bourke, the all-weather leather, where what I loved is the ones where everything is the tan color. So this is the main body of the leather is this stuff. The way that Dooney and Bourke, these are the old ones that were made in the US, and it's not actually coated. It's sort of like shrunken to get the pebble thing. So you also have the same thing on the inside as you do on the vintage coach, where you just have the back of the leather. It's really an unlined bag. And what I'm showing you is technically the back. So this bag, I think it's called a zip. It actually reminds me a lot of the Louis Vuitton satchel. It also, there's a Hermes bolide, but it's just, you know, it's this shape of bag. There's a lot of companies that make this shape of bag. I really like this bag. So, and you do have the duck on the front. You could carry it the other way. I sort of turned it the other way because I have a scarf on here, which I don't feel like untying and retying, but I wanted to show you the bag a little better. But the duck stands out so much less when everything is all the same color. So it's, you know, I just love this bag. And these you can get typically under $100. Harder to find the tone on tone ones. There are more black on black ones. We haven't talked about black. Black for day, it's just not my personal thing. If it's your thing, it's your thing. I feel like it's maybe not quite the whole look that we're looking at here. Is going to be a little more tan on the bags, tans and browns and maybe burgundies. Not so much, especially during the day. In the evening, you'd wear black. Wouldn't go with any bright colors. Everything was very neutral and earth tony. Although we can also do navy. We are much more, if we're going to go in a more nautical vibe, we can do navy, and that will bring us to the next brand, which will be Longchamp. So here we would have a Longchamp Le Pliage bag. This one is a Les Planètes line, which was discontinued in 2014, and I like the ones. A lot of them have patent leather, which just doesn't wear very well, and I really like the ones that have the croc embossed leather. You can find those for well under $100. You know, you can always wear a Longchamp bag. It's not exciting. It may not be what you want to do. I think a little more with the croc. I personally like that a little bit more than your standard Le Pliage original. I have found some really cool bags, and not all of them I've bought. Oh my gosh, I've wanted to. If you just type Longchamp in the search bar of, I use Mercari and Poshmark. You can do that on eBay, anywhere else. Because a lot of these were honestly probably bags people bought on vacation that nobody really knows the name of. And Longchamp isn't really as strong as like Coach with like model numbers and names and things where people know exactly what they're selling. So there's a digestible amount out there. So if you just type Longchamp, you will find some interesting bags. There's some really neat bags. Again, from the 90s, I would say, is just a time when leather bags were being really well made. I would not recommend secondhand on the La Plage original, for the most part, they're either trashed people or people are selling fakes or whatnot, and they're just not that expensive. Maybe don't on that. I do have a Longchamp boutique in my area, and I went in and looked at them in person. And the Rosso Essential line, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, sorry. They, again, are the leather where it's all one piece. It's more pebbled. I would say it's a little bit more like the Dooney and Bourke. I think it's actually maybe similar to an Hermes Clemence leather. It's just it's full grain leather. So it's just a bag that is made out of a piece of leather, and it's unlined. I think they have pockets and other trim and different things. I really like the bucket. It's small, it's cute. I would think about buying it actually, but I don't think any of the colors that they have right now are really doing it for me. And the tote is really lovely. I would say the tote has very much the feeling of the Hermes garden party, but also if you're in the mood for something that looks like an Hermes garden party of the canvas variety, you really cannot go wrong. And I'm going to apologize because I can't show you easily this whole bag because I have the extra large size because I use it for mail, outgoing Etsy orders. And the LL Bean boat and tote. It's a beautiful bag. It will last you a very long time. They're just great. They're actually still made in the US. They're stiff. They get kind of dirty and gross, and you can really only, I think you're supposed to spot clean them. I've heard of people putting them in the washing machine. I think they lose all their structure. I don't know that I would do that to this little workhorse of a bag. There's actually a story about when Carolyn Bessette she was Carolyn Bessette at the time, but when she went to meet the Kennedys for the first time after she was dating John for a while, she did not have expensive things, and she ended up deciding to just bring her LL Bean tote bag. You're talking about around $50 for one of these, less for a smaller size. And they're just fantastic bags. They will be around for a long time. And that's really what we're looking for here, which is what I like about this trend. I would say, like, I only really jump on a trend in the sense, I mean, I'm in my 50s. I don't need to be in everybody's trends. But when something becomes popular that aligns with what I like, I am aware of that, and I will be looking out for it on the secondhand market for the most part in a few years as the trend goes out. But I really do like the aspect of buying things that are made to last and that you're going to continue to use. And so I don't feel that there's a better way to end this video than with a lovely LL Bean boat and tote bag. See you next time.